So I'm pretty sure that Tyranids are coming to Darktide, just maybe not in the way you'd expect. Fat Shark has done their best to not give too much away, but if you're lucky enough to get certain in-game voice lines and you have a little outside 40k knowledge, they're definitely trying to tell us something. The most recent hint being Vox number 10 that they dropped on YouTube. Now, I've spent hours poring through every shred of in-game and out-of-game content since Vox 10 was released.
I wonder if that binary means anything. Thanks, Fat Shark.
Looking for some kind of hidden hint that absolutely clinches my theory. In the end, I didn't really need to translate Dark Tongue.
What?
Or decipher Morse code.
What?
Or go to the official codexes, because Vox 9 and 10 aside, everything we need to know is already in the game. So let's get to it, and remember, blessed is the mind too small for doubt. Leading up to the PC release of Darktide in November 2022, Fat Shark put out a series of 6 Vox transmissions from Inquisition operative Wormwood. These Voxes showed us the Nurgle incursion of Tertium, set up the Mobian 6th turning traitor, and generally gave us a play-by-play of what happened in Tertium to get us where we open in the game. After the game's launch, there were no more Voxes, and Wormwood was generally presumed dead. But she's back! Over the last couple weeks, we've gotten 2 new transmissions from Wormwood, but her survival prognosis is still not looking good.
I believe I have been detected, and my identity as your agent discovered. And there are things loose. Deviant things. They stir in the shadows of the low hive, but they are clawing their way up to the light. I think they have sent something to find me. I can feel it stalking me, slipping from shadow to shadow, hunting for my hiding place. I keep switching locations to find new ones to hide in, but it has my scent.
Okay, so there's a bit to unpack here. Wormwood believes that she's been discovered as Grendel's agent, but we, the audience, would have assumed that it was the Nurgle cult in Tertium that's found her out. The mention of demon things instead of just demons, or more agents of rot clawing their way up from the depths, and a super stealthy assassin monster that's following her scent is something a lot different from good old Papa Nerds. Those blessed by pestilence are bloated, fetid, reek to high hell, and they're totally falling apart. They're not built for stealth, and there isn't really a Nurgle unit established in the 40k universe that would make much sense to work into an ultra-stealthy assassin. Is it impossible that this is some kind of Nurgle force? No. Could it be another ruinous power or a general demonic incursion? Possibly. Fat Shark is known to take creative liberties with existing factions and monsters to make them work in a first-person Left 4 Dead style game. But ask 40k fans to name an animalistic monster with a keen sense of smell, claws as a major identifiable feature, unyielding in its hunt for its prey, stalking them through the shadows unseen, and you're probably going to hear the same answer a lot. A Lictor. Lictors are Tyranid assassins built for stealth. Its carapace is covered in scales that shift in color and texture to allow it to hide in plain sight in any environment. It has large, scythe-like claws that are not only deadly, but allow it to easily scale terrain. It's patient, it's powerful, and can dispatch prey that knows too much by eating their brain. Lictors are often sent as a precursor to a full Tyranid invasion, and one could very well be in Tertium in response to a large, well-established Genestealer cult within the Hive City.
Sir, question for you, sir. What's Genestealers?
Well, Ogren, I'm so glad you asked. If Darktide is your first or one of your first introductions to 40k and you have no idea what the hell I'm talking about, a Genestealer cult is made up of people who have been infected with Tyranid DNA by a Genestealer broodlord sent to a populated world specifically for the purpose of starting the cult. This cult of Tyranid-infected humans begin to worship an unfathomably large hive fleet in space called the Great Devourer. The ultimate purpose of the Genestealer cult is to eventually make way for a full Tyranid invasion where the insatiably voracious hive god they worship arrives to devour the entire world. Kind of like Galactus in Marvel, if you're familiar with that, except if Galactus was a lot of bugs, and the Silver Surfer was also a bug guy, and then put his DNA into people and waited for them to have a lot of babies with that same infected DNA. Speaking of babies, humans infected by Genestealers eventually reproduce by natural means and give birth to Tyranid human hybrids. Original infectees remain visually human, but their children come out looking more like obvious monster people. Subsequent generations become more and more human looking until Generation 4, where they basically look like normal people. Then Gen 5 pops out, and for some reason they're 100% pure Genestealer, so they can go infect more people and continue the cycle. If you're thinking, man, that sounds like a really inefficient way to grow a cult, you are correct. Genestealer cults aren't about fast results. They can slow burn for years and years before their uprising happens, sowing discord and panic among the uninfected people on the planet while the Tyranid hive fleet is on the way to eat them. The closer a cult can get to global domination, the better. How do all those people keep their mouths shut and not blow their cover for so long before they're ready to strike? Oh, that's the best part, they don't. Infected people and natural-born hybrids don't even know they've been infected. They're all going about their lives, and for those born as passively human, can even hold positions within sects of the Imperium. Cultists could be doing their job in the Astra Militarum and never have an infraction on their record. They could even be people trusted enough to have a place in, say, an Inquisitor's makeshift warband. Yeah, okay, Joe, you might be saying. This is a stretch. One Vox from Fat Shark's promotional campaigns isn't enough to say an entire unrelated faction from left field is going to be put in the game, much less that one of the characters in Darktide is a Genestealer cultist. This is total clickbait. Nothing in the game supports this, doesn't it? Darktide has a lot of voice lines, over 85,000 by Fat Shark's own estimates, and more than just a few of those gens outright establish Xeno sightings in Tertium, and even go as far as to imply someone within the warband might be a Genestealer cultist themselves.
What them aliens that infect puny humans?
The Ice Lab! Foul hybrids of alien and man! The curse of ravening Xenos is gone! Xenos can appear as humans. Troubling indeed. Lost 3 Mordian regiments there, didn't they? Something about Genestealers.
Poor Xenos that infect humans. Very fair. Used to me. Sounds nasty though. Where there's hybrids, there's a broodlord nearby. Nasty grey carcass.
That's an awful lot of talk about one faction, more than any other potential enemies get name dropped in the game actually. And an outright Vox announcement on the Morningstar that names a deep hive sector as a location of a confirmed Xeno sighting is actually a huge tip-off that Genestealers are probably coming. When a Genestealer successfully infiltrates a hive city, the lowest slums are the place that they typically begin to set up shop. As we've seen in the missions throughout Darktide that take place in the hab centers, the living situation for most people is really gross. Overwhelming stench, acid rains, cramped spaces hundreds if not thousands of feet below the light of day, and these aren't even the lowest, shittiest slums that people can live in. Since Genestealer cultists tend to birth monstrous looking babies for a few generations, it behooves them to hang around in the sections of town where a guy who always wears a bag over his head isn't that big of a deal because everyone else is fucked up and hideous from living in sewage. Okay, fine. So what if Genestealers are in Tertium? That doesn't mean that they're going to be in the game, and nothing proves that they're in the warband either. If one of the main ways a Genestealer cult grows is natural reproduction, then to get a suspect list within the Inquisition of who might be compromised, we would want to look at Tertium natives. But more than that, this person would have to be able to pass as human, and would likely read to Psychers as a bit odd, because while this person wouldn't have a direct connection to the Tyranid hive mind, they would still carry a latent psychic connection to the broodlord that started their cult, waiting for the cult uprising activation orders. This person, being part of the Inquisition warband, would probably be in a position of influence or able to outright make certain decisions, and would likely be driven to take drastic measures outside of the norm to save the hive city, not only because of the lives of people from their homeworld at stake, but also from a subliminal instinct to protect the Genestealer cult. With the emergence of the Nurgle incursion, the Genestealer broodlord's back is essentially put against the wall. Without pure living humans to infect, the cult can't grow large enough to call out to their Tyranid hive fleet god they worship, meaning no feast for the Tyranid biomass. The Genestealer's hand would essentially be forced early: stop the Nurgle invasion, or be snuffed out themselves. So we're looking for a Tertium native.
The city of Tertium is under attack. My city.
Who grew up in the lower levels of the hive.
I grew up in the torrent. Fought like hell to escape, but there's no escaping your past, is there?
In a position of power within the warband.
Well, you coming or not?
Completely unaware of their current affliction, but likely an oddness detected to those with psychic capabilities.
Last night, I dreamt of Zola. 2 Zolas, in fact. They quarreled, and in the end, one killed the other.
Her mind is a series of closed boxes, one inside the other. I do wonder about Zola. Her thoughts are jumbled up and often contradictory.
Yes, I had noticed much the same. Her present is entangled with the shadows of her past. Fascinating.
I suspect she is more fragile than she seems.
Or stronger. It depends on where the truth lies. But I suppose time will tell.
Yes, rejects, it seems our steadfast explicator Zola may not be what she seems. Okay, as a quick aside, there is another dialogue in the game that's a huge smoking gun to add to this. I've seen it talked about by others online, and I've spent more than 35 hours in the last couple days grinding missions with a loner psyker over and over trying to get this voice line to pop, but luck wasn't on my side. The gist of what's said is that a loner psyker will mention that Zola is keeping a secret, another character will respond, and then the psyker will go on to say that Zola herself isn't even aware that she's keeping a secret. If you've encountered this dialogue, please let us know so that my credentials here aren't just, trust me bro. The dialogues telling this also makes it explicitly clear that she's in conflict with herself and very likely not even aware that she's effectively a traitor. With the confirmed Xeno sightings within the deep sectors of Tertium, repeated mentions amongst the rejects specifically about Genestealers, an Inquisition agent being stalked by a creature that sounds suspiciously like a Lictor, and a high-ranking member of the warband Psykers can feel has conflict within herself that she doesn't even know about, the writing seems to be on the wall that Nurgle isn't the only threat at work in Atoma. Still not convinced? Let's look at Fat Shark's previous Tide game, Vermintide 2, which made a major evolution from Vermintide 1 by bringing 3 different factions into the game instead of just one. Developmentally, it would be kind of a big step backwards to return to a single enemy faction, especially for a live service game Fat Shark intends to support for years to come. I was actually very surprised when Darktide launched with only Nurgle enemies because for their audience that played Vermintide 2, Nurgle is old hat. To keep player interest and achieve that longevity Fat Shark is expecting from Darktide, it's going to be necessary to add a variety of enemies to the game. Also, Darktide has already used in-game voice lines to telegraph content that will be coming. Before the Archivum Sycorax map was added to the game, the commander for your mission would point out the Archivum when walking around in a different mission. For Vermintide 2, Fat Shark added a mysterious voice that talked to the Uberstrike 5 heroes in Talshorn Keep, hinting Bellicor was coming in the Castle Drakenfell expansion for the game. All of this to make a point that in-game chatter hints for future content is something Fat Shark is known to do. Now, mechanically, a Genestealer cult fits the bill for being a well-balanced and unique Tide-type enemy. They're literally described in existing 40k material as rising up in a surging tide when they finally unleash their attack. Basic cultists, firstborn generations would be akin to poxwalkers, obviously not normal humans, vast in numbers, but weak enemies. More advanced generations would be great to make up the tougher basic ranks similar to dregs and scabs who are more human-looking. Tweaked versions of pure Genestealers, acolyte hybrids, neophyte hybrids, and aberrants would fulfill the roles of different elites and specialists. A magus with some creative liberties taken would create encounters similar to a demon host and fill the role of an enemy psyker class that's missing from the game. Lictors would make a fun addition as a type of monstrosity as a mid-game mini-boss. For assassination targets, a Primus would be a likely candidate. Based on when Vox 9 and 10 came out, I'm willing to bet that we're going to see Genestealers unleashed upon Tertium for the first anniversary of Darktide, which is November 30th of this year. But what do you think? Are you on the Genestealer hype train, or do you think I was dropped on my head as a child and the brain damage has clearly affected my judgment? Let me know in the comments! No, but seriously, I'm always excited to talk about 40k lore. Thanks for watching! Come back for the next Darktide content I'll be putting out in a couple weeks. Till then, I'll see you out there against the Darktide.